I've never really socially fit in. I've always been just outside of like popular circles, which is had a massive influence on me as a teacher, but also like where I am now. And so when you're growing up in a household where the parents just, it's toxic, and it wasn't a great framework for my relationships, regardless of the relationship that I have with my mum and my dad individually, and my brother. Stressed, have a drink. Sad, have a drink. Happy, have a drink. Party, have a drink. We're like constantly surrounded by parties. You know, I can't really remember a time where there wasn't alcohol in my house. Like I told you, I've had the dream of the black market since I was 18. And part of the reason why I've picked it up and I've put it down over a lot of time over the years is really because of the ingrained kind of messages that I have. I used to joke with, in fact I still do, with one of my best friends, Zoe, we should have been dead at 15. Trauma headlines are, I was sexually assaulted by another child when I was 7 at school. It was a connection through the horror convention circuit that we got through to John. Met him in London, showed him what we put together, and he was like, "You're crazy kids, you're crazy." But it's the 25th anniversary and like next year it's supposed to be perfect. Like, you can only do it with let me help you, I'll deal with the Universal Studios.
I believe everyone has a story to tell. Through seeking true, authentic insights about the entrepreneurial journey, I provide a platform for our peers to share their stories and inspire those that listen. This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions. Okay, welcome to another episode of the County Business Talks podcast. Today I'm joined by an inspirational business owner that has produced award-winning films, dedicated her life to education, empowerment and equality, and making transformative and sustainable change in the arts education. She now wants to champion transformation in the arts industry to ensure future generations are afforded the equality of representation they deserve. I'm delighted to welcome the founder of the Black Market, Romy Alford, to the podcast. How are you?
Oh, thank you. That's such a lovely introduction. I wasn't expecting that.
Well, it's all true, isn't it?
Thank
You're
you.
amazing. It's been great to get to know you, obviously, over the last few months, and we've obviously met. So I asked a couple of times and had a chat about some stuff, and just honestly, it's amazing what you're doing, and it's really inspiring. So, and I'm really excited about having this chat with you today and telling people about your journey and your story. So, let's jump straight in, shall we?
Okay, go for it.
Right, so let's start your story. Tell me a little bit about life growing up, something about your early years, the sort of shape who you are today.
Okay. Well, I'm a Croydon girl originally, and I guess it's been a theme in my life that it's a kind of game of two halves, I've started to realise. So family background is, working class, East Croydon, West Croydon. We tend to have, if you're from Croydon, you tend to have this thing of like, it's a shithole, but it's my shithole. And I think my parents worked really hard to get us out of the kind of very central bits. So I was born in East Croydon, but moved to Purley when I was about 10, which is just outside of like main Croydon area, if you don't know it. But essentially the motivating factor for that was the school that I went to was like one of the worst in the country. It was literally round the corner from the house, and that's the only reason why I went there. But both me and my brother had a really rough time at that school, and so my parents moved us out when I was about 8 or 9, something like that, and my brother he's about 4 years younger than me. So I ended up going to a private school in Croydon, which obviously was a completely different experience. And I went from not having teachers be supportive to very, very like high standards of education, and that kind of leap you know, I was doing Saturday school. I was to do entrance tests, and my parents have always been very like championing of education. Like my mum used to read to us a lot when we were kids. I could read fluently by the age of 4. So it was just a completely different world, and it was. Did
you enjoy that obviously the move to the private school? You enjoy that period of education?
The challenge, the educational challenge was great. I think I've never really socially fit in. I've always been just outside of like popular circles, which is had a massive influence on me as a teacher, but also like where I am now. I was never one of the it girls. I was always very, very sporty, very into like performing arts. So when I got into the, I only went there for a couple of years, but they did like whole school plays, and they had wonderful, wonderful teachers. There was a couple, and when I went, they must have, I don't know, in their 60s, something like that, the Palmers. And the husband would write and compose these musicals, and Mrs. Palmer would be the drama teacher, and she would choreograph everything. So there was this real kind of connection with the arts and family. Is that where like that initial spark sort of come from for you, do you think, for the arts and stuff? Yeah, I think looking back on it now, there's a... When you're working with so many people under like extreme pressurized conditions, you form bonds that I can't really describe, other than it is like an extended, it is like a family. You're all there for the same purpose. Yes, there's, you know, competition with who's going to get main parts, and you know, you can get all that bitchiness, all that kind of stuff. But generally, when you've got the right director, you've got people who are working towards a greater purpose, and it's that buzz when you're doing rehearsals and like backstage, and when you're about to go on, and when you get a really supportive cast, because it is vulnerable. You are very vulnerable, the same as like it being in a family, right? And you're presenting yourself to a whole load of strangers, plus, you know, singing, dancing, acting, creating character. But when you know that you've got people behind you who've got your back, that makes a huge difference. And probably only now I'm starting to really realise that, because my own family situation wasn't that way, and for many reasons was a source of a lot of conflict, that connection, that parallel, you know, when it was getting when it was really bad, I was getting into the arts, and I was creating these little families, because every cast is different, every play is different, every musical is different, every character that you can escape into, you can have a different connection with. And you know, I've always been reading like lots of fantasy, lots of science fiction, you know, these kind of role model characters, Lord of the Rings, strong women, Roald Dahl, like at the time, you know, being a child, all these kind of worlds where it's like young people were empowered, and I guess that has a lot of parallel to how I didn't feel at the time. So I did a lot of escaping, like just sitting in my room reading books for like days on end, which was amazing. But because you say, because your family life then at that stage, at that young age, wasn't great, you say, like, it's always been a source of conflict. And you know, I love my parents, don't get me wrong, they've done a lot of amazing things for me. It was the kind of, being an adult though, they were in a relationship that they probably should have left when they were younger. And so when you're growing up in a household where the parents just, it's toxic, and it wasn't a great framework for my relationships, regardless of the relationship that I have with my mum and my dad individually, and my brother. I can very much see that now, doing some work on it, the generational trauma that's been passed down, and a lot of that has to do with coming from a place like Croydon. And similarly, my mum grew up in, well, born in Germany, Hong Kong, you know, had a stepfather who was in the army, so moved around a lot, you know, she's got her own stuff, but then ended up in Gillingham, Medway towns, so very similar in terms of background. You know, there's a lot of violence in my dad's history, split families, all kinds of, you know, I have to draw a family tree to explain it to new people.
Wow.
That's how, you know, so I can see my parents' motivation for wanting to stay together, because they both come from families that have been split, cut again, split. So I don't say that with any criticism. But I recognise that was the groundwork for our family and what me and my brother were brought into. And also their generations didn't discuss things like mental health. They didn't discuss things like trauma. And so you've got a bunch of traumatised children who were born in the 60s and 70s whose parents were children of war, and the whole attitude was like, what are you talking about?
Just get on with it.
Just get on with it. Or in my family's case, it was stressed, have a drink, sad, have a drink, happy, have a drink, party, have a drink. We're like constantly surrounded by parties. You know, I can't really remember a time where there wasn't alcohol in my house.
What's your relationship with alcohol, or as you've grown up?
Not good.
Really?
No, I wouldn't say by any stretch of the imagination like alcoholic, but I would say that definitely I started drinking like Bacardi Breezes and Smirnoff Ice when I was about 12. Wow. And a lot of it was distraction and ways of coping. So our family way of dealing with emotion was explosive, and it was, you know, hold it in, and then explode, and then it's, you know, drama, screaming, fighting, all alcohol fueled, and then either pretending like nothing had happened or it's all right again. But it was, as someone, I have 2 children of my own now, 4-year-old about to be 5 and 2 about to be 3, and having them, and having gone through my own recent divorce and final conclusion of a child custody case, which is such a relief, that I represented myself in, it's made me confront a lot of patterns of behaviour, and that I'm noticing a lot more now as an adult, and especially interacting with my parents as an adult, that I don't want to pass on to my own children, and be this sort of phrase that keeps being thrown around at the moment is like a conscious parent, like a you know, conscious parenting. And again, I come at that with no, but it's not me sitting here going, oh, my parents are so awful, blah, 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 blah. I'm not saying that at all. I actually wish for them that they would have the opportunity to actually sit down and deal with the stuff that they've all been through. It's just, that wasn't the way they were trained, right?
And like you said, there's more education out there, there's more ways to learn about ourselves and stuff now with, you know, online or whatever that looks like, or just actually being more open to be able to talk about stuff on platforms like this, for example, or actually just with circles of friends that actually you can sit there and talk a little bit more openly as you are. Whereas, like you said, that's just learned behaviour. They didn't know that back then, and it's got to take people to break a mould, I guess, like what you are. Like you said, you're a parent now, knowing that actually how I potentially was parented is not how I want to be as a parent. I'm assuming I'm getting from what you're saying.
Yeah, and it has so much influence, and it's the reason why I'm linking to it is because it's had so much influence on me as a business owner and my attitude towards business. And whereas, you know, like I told you, I've had the dream of the black market since I was 18. And part of the reason why I've picked it up and I've put it down over a lot of time over the years is really because of the ingrained kind of messages that I have about money, finance, risk, business, employment, which all comes from my parents' generational trauma about security and, you know, yeah, fine, I understand, don't go and blow 100k on, you know, opening a bar and all this kind of stuff. I get that. There's calculated risk, but there's also this fear that's been built into me over the years about, for above anything else, you know, pay the bills, have a steady job, and so that kind of stomach dropping fear of like, oh my God, I can't possibly ask for a business loan, or I couldn't possibly, if I don't have this and this, or I have to work full time, or I have to do that, which has led me to also stay in education for so long, which has been creatively very frustrating. And it's only literally since I had probably the third professional burnout that I've had in my entire career that I went back to back market, and I was like, I'm not going to live my life like this anymore. I can't live my life like this anymore. And it's at a time where I've got 2 children, I'm a single mum, I'm responsible. I'm more responsible than I was at 18. I was like the poorest I've ever been in my life, but you know, I'm less fearful. But and it's such a weird dichotomy. It really is.
Because that, like, so many people come on and talk about their entrepreneurial journeys and starting a business and when's the right time to start a business, similar to when's the right time to start. There isn't actually ever a right time, is there? And I think that's, listening to what you're saying, exactly the position you're in right now. Like, you've gone through a period with something that you've dreamed of doing for such a long period of time, and actually you now potentially could be the worst time as a single mum, but when is going to be the right time unless you take that leap and do it? And like you said, I think there's so much that's been ingrained in society for our parents' generation and more so, that is exactly that, like less risk, like you've got to get a job, pay your mortgage. That's society's expectations of what it should be. I spoke to Lindsay Clay from Connected Brighton the other day, and we was talking about like her blueprint of what life should be, people's expectations and what that should be like, and 2.4 children, and you're married, and your house, and etc. And actually, if you break the mold and do something slightly different, that actually if you're happy, then that's what ultimately what we're striving for, and to take risk. And cause we only get one life, don't we? We only get one chance at it, so we've got to live the best life we can. And it's amazing to listen to you going through that journey, I guess, getting to a point where you actually gone, right, whatever the time is now, I'm just going to make this and go and make this happen.
I think I made that conscious decision because what's happened is, and what happens just, I think it happens anyway, when you're young, you have like this core thing of like what makes you happy, and then you have layers of parental stuff, friends, peer pressure. I saw something on, I'm like, I was the most anti-Instagrammable person on the planet for years. I was like, I'm not doing Instagram, I'm not doing it. I was a head of media and film, so it's ironic, but I like old school stuff. It just where my heart lies, which is where, the burlesque and the vintage and the 40s and all that kind of thing. But, I accept that you can do amazing things with modern technology. Yeah. So again, it's always, for me, it's dichotomy. It's always the word that comes into my head when I think about my life. I'm very extreme, like black and white sort of things. So, the things that make you happy, and then you get these layers of trauma, influence, puberty, fitting in. I'm a kid of the 90s, so especially for me as a woman, like defining what femininity meant to me. You know, my mum's thing and generation was always like, oh, if you have children past 25, then you're on the shelf. It's old. And then so I had all this drive and you know, my friends and I all had this thing like, we want to be young mums. You know, I don't want to be 27, like that's way too old to be having kids. And that also that driver of especially around like relationships, you know, we were just, I used to joke with, in fact I still do, with one of my best friends, Zoe, we should have been dead at 15, because the amount of times that we would go out clubbing, she grew up in Bromley, I grew up in Croydon, you know, literally wearing nothing and completely over-sexualised for our age, you know, which adds a whole other layer to things. There was a club called the Blue Orchid, which was opposite Fairfield Halls in Croydon, and it used to be called the Blue School Kid, because you knew that it was full of under 18s, and all you had to do on a Saturday night is go with a push-up bra and a low top and a little skirt, and the bouncers would just let you in. Wow. So I was, you know, sneaking out of the house or lying to my parents at age 15, saying that we'd all coordinate it. You know, you hear about it, but it actually did happen. We'd all coordinate it. I had a friend who lived in Kenley, which is near Purley, but it's like hills and hills and hills and hills. And there was one night where we went to the Blue Orchid. We got out at 3 a.m. or whatever it was. It was at the time when you could smoke in clubs still. Yeah. So my clothes reeked of smoke, you know, snog some boy on the dance floor, whatever I'd done. And we didn't have enough money to get a taxi back to her house. And we were all in like high heel platform boots. And we're literally the days of cash. So we're sitting there with like, I've got 10p, you've got 5. How much have we got? You know, and the taxi driver threw us out at the bottom of one hill. And we had to walk. I just remember walking up and down these hills to get back to this girl's house. And then I didn't have my bus money for the next day, so I had to walk back home. And then try and put my clothes in the washing machine, which I didn't know how to use because my mum had never taught me. So that she was like, why do your clothes smell of smoke? Da, 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 da. But anyway, you know, and I used to do things like walking back from Croydon, you know, at 2 a.m. and getting lifts from lorry drivers, you know, at the petrol station, and a lot of that was a will to, my mum used to call it risk-taking behaviour, but really when I think about it, it was just to be noticed or recognised, I think, because the family situation has been so all-consuming for my parents for so many years that they would just get pissed to check out from that. So it's not until being a sober adult that you recognise that your entire parenting journey has been with people who are drunk or hungover. And having been in that situation myself, the things that you take on as a child, the messages that you take on a child that you think are real, that you think are, oh, they're saying this to me because they're my primary person in my life and my caregiver, and whatever phrase you want to use, and if they're saying it must be true. It's not coming from a place of clear thinking. It's coming from a place of, oh, I'm either off my head and the alcohol releases whatever trauma I've got in me, so I'm just projecting onto you, or I'm hungover, so I don't want to deal with you. So then you feel like you're a burden, and therefore, like when you asked me about my relationship with alcohol, you know, when I was 15, I was drinking litre bottles of vodka at school parties and stuff. You know, we had these trousers, which, because I was like a rocky, grungy, kind of, that was my thing. And I really connected to, you know, like Linkin Park, Eminem, all of those bands and stuff who, you know, very like tortured souls, and, you know, that depression kind of thing, but releasing it through arts. So, you know, I used to have like, I think it was 6 pockets, with the big tassels. I don't know if you remember those, but I would put like, it became a joke, but it really wasn't actually when you look at it, like bottles in there. So I'd be walking around a party clinking, and if people would be like, oh, I need a drink, I'd be like, oh, here you go, you know.
Wow.
But that was my, alcohol didn't judge, and I could be different, you know. It gave me confidence in a way, or it made me so aggressive that I didn't really care. You know, I used to try to start fights with people. In fact, I did. Went through a period of being a teenager of just being so angry and willful to not be on the planet anymore that I would just put myself in situations where someone could just like take me out of it.
And what period? Like, how can you pinpoint, or do you remember a time then? Because you're talking from sort of 15 to how long did that period last for until you? Because you obviously at a point broke the mould of that and decided to change. Was that just coming out like 16, 17, 18, or how long was that period for?
I don't think I came out of it until I was 25.
Really?
So, I mean, the kind of trauma headlines are, I was sexually assaulted by another child when I was 7 at school, but that was never investigated. I never got any therapy for it. It was all kind of like hushed under the carpet. I don't think my parents knew how to deal with it. So I lived with that for a really long time. And then obviously when you're a teenager, 14, 15, 16, you know, I wanted relationships with boys, but I was so I didn't know why I was affected, but I was affected. And then that came with a whole load of like shame and criticism. And so there was this whole cycle on top of the messages that I was getting from my own mum that, you know, there's something wrong with me, I'm undesirable, I have battled with anorexia my whole life. Came out of that maybe 2 years ago. Actually, thanks to a local health club, funnily enough. But yeah, so all of that, and then tied into this angry female, you know, I was very political at the time, like I was in an all-girls school as well. That didn't help, you know. I had a group of friends, but I never really had, I mean, it was a bit High School Musically, but my kind of connection, my group were like the drama girls, and very much was into film, you know, Tarantino, Scorsese, all of the kind of, in fact, probably connected to stories about relationships and things like that, aside from the kind of the fantasy stuff. And so that age, I was also in the Air Cadets. It's a bit, again, it's dichotomy, right? Yeah, so you've got this, you've got this, don't fuck with me, I'm like Croydon girl, oh, but I'm in a place of like authority. This is what I mean. So there's this constant like struggle. Because
although you want to challenge and not fit into anything, there's a part of you that does want to fit in somewhere.
Absolutely.
So like we all crave connection, I guess, and we all want to have that form of connection, be ourselves, but have that form of connection. So it's so strange, like to hear you talk like that, like challenging so many things and going against the grain and doing all them different, and then actually no, I want to just fit in here and have that situation.
Yeah, I think I was looking for a place to feel like I fit in, because I didn't fit in my own house.
Yeah.
And that's really the theme that has run through a lot of that period of career choices. And, you know, like I said, when I was I got into the bar industry. My best friend James, who lives in France, his husband now, But, you know, we instantly connected. Like, we worked the bar trade for a really long time. And that was a whole, you know, it fitted me because it was out of hours. I didn't have to be at home all the time. I missed sort of like everyone. It was a drinking culture.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And our family parties and stuff have always been like well known for like great food, great music, lots of alcohol, cocktails, all this kind of stuff, which is great when you're coming and having a good time. But, you know, it's not an everyday. So there was never any really like healthy time or space to discuss or explore or say, you know, I feel this way. And if I ever I referred myself to therapy when I was 15, 16. I went to a counselling service and I said, I think I've got a problem with like relationship issues. And I think they were like, you're 15, what are you doing here? Go away, we can't help you. You know, so I tried.
Wow.
I reckon, you know, I'm very like self-aware, and that's come through a lot of like self-motivated seeking of support, because trying to talk to my parents about it just got a completely defensive reaction. And so I, you know, friends I had in lots of different places, and I've always kind of been, I don't know about social butterfly, but, you know, never really that one.
Because you're craving that. Is it, I'm just trying to put in it, is it because you're craving that connection from someone or something? Because I guess the people that you rely on to have that connection with are your parents. I guess growing up as a kid, and you didn't have that. You didn't feel that you could go to them with whether they're issues or they're things on your mind and problems that you've got. They're the people that you want to go to and ask for help, and they wasn't there for that.
Yeah, and I think in different ways. So, you know, my dad has always been extremely supportive of me, but that created a conflict with my mum. And so at that period, from what I remember, because most of it I spent in the bars, in the clubs, drinking, doing my own thing, escaping. I think I ended up not doing that because it just created too much aggro. So I cut myself. I can see that I cut myself off as well from my parents because it was just too painful. And so we had quite a long period of being around each other and being together, but not really connecting. And, you know, I was trying to seek that connection, which probably led me to get into this relationship with my first boyfriend who listened. And I think that was the main thing, probably because he had nothing else to do. But you know, again, it was like a really silly, toxic relationship. But that was the one that I did the documentary. So he was a big horror fan. I still remember his bedroom, actually. It was just full of horror characters. Oh my god! You wake up in the middle of the night and there's like the saw doll at the end of the bed. I should have run then, but it fit my whole kind of like alternative and, you know, weird, misunderstood kind of thing. Anyway, so he really liked American Werewolf in London, which was directed by John Landis, who did Michael Jackson's Thriller and Blues Brothers, and you know, very well-known Hollywood director. So he said he wanted to make this making of documentary, and I was like, okay, well, you write it and I'll produce it. And we also I love the Lost Boys as well, and he was writing for a magazine and that kind of thing. So he put down some stuff about what he wanted to do, and I was like, okay, let me call up the actors and the actresses and see if they'll talk to us. And I literally just started ringing.
This is at 18, right?
Yeah. And we got interviews with, oh my god, the Doctor, I think, from American Werewolf, and Jenny Agutter. She agreed to be interviewed before we'd even met John. because they love him so much. So they're like, yeah, of course, we'd love to talk about American Werewolf. Da, da, da. So yeah, that's how it all started. And then we went to, I found all the filming locations and went and did to camera pieces. And it was a connection through the horror convention circuit that we got through to John. Met him in London, showed him what we put together. And he was like, you're crazy kids, you're crazy. But it's the 25th anniversary and like next year, so this would be perfect. Like, you can only do it with let me help you. I'll deal with the Universal Studios. Yes, thank you. No worries. He was like, I need the final sign. Yeah, cool, no problem. And then it just kind of went from there. So
we need to touch on that a little bit, because listening to all of what you've just talked about and your upbringing and background and the place you are personally, to 18 be able to go, I'm going to produce this movie. We're going to get to Universal Studios. Like, how does that happen? How does that happen? How does that mind? Like, even like, because if you, because we've painted a bit of a picture of what. Of this type of person you were at that young age, and what you've been through, and the trauma and everything that you've described and really openly shared with us, and yet you've gone from that to you're in that position, and yet you've created that. You've got the confidence. You talked about lack of confidence and stuff, but you've got the confidence to be able to go, I'm going to produce it, and I'm going to do, and you did do that and delivered it.
How did that happen?
How did that?
I think a lot of it is to do with, so my school, I went to Wallington Girls, which is grammar school, and Sutton's known for having like the best grammar schools in the country. So they were really integral in, yes, I mean, there's the kind of like usual school stuff, but you know, it was a culture of really high expectation, but also especially in terms of like women. So their motto was heirs of the past, makers of the future. And that was drummed into us like every single day. And I think also through a lot of research that I've been doing like the last couple of weeks or so, there's this, if you've had emotional kind of absence from parents, you really have like overachieving high expectations and to get that recognition. So this is a kind of theme that's been coming up for me. It's like I can't stop. I can't just, like I used to, you know, make bags out of jeans and, you know, like create, you know, artsy craftsy things. It's got to be extra. It's always got to be extra. And I think some of that is also proving to myself that I'm worthy of like being alive, but also that culture of probably parental recognition.
You're seeking their approval.
Yeah, which is frustrating and ridiculous, but I think it used to be like that at the time. It was probably like that. It's not so much now, because it takes away your currency and your autonomy and your self acknowledgement of yourself, and you know, I'm doing this for me. But back then I was surrounded by such a high achieving culture, and every day it was like, we get the best results in the country, and we're this, and we've had this alumni, and this and that and this. And so I naturally, having come from a family like that, stepped into that culture, and I did English media and drama, and my drama teacher I actually saw last week, funnily enough. So she's known me since I was 11, and she's just been so supportive, again, in that kind of like pseudo mother role. And I had another teacher called Miss Alvarez, who was my media and English teacher, and she was more of like a big sister kind of role model. And they were always, you know, so supportive of me, and Yeah, I took a gap year, so I did my A levels, and I got stage fright when I was 17, mainly because I'd always been on stage.
Yeah.
And I went into directing. And apparently I still hold the school record for like the top marks in that particular directing thing. So I did like a version of Antigone.
Wow.
And I really loved it, but it allowed me to kind of, take control. And again, it's that creating the air cadets and the thing about, being so out of control. It's like, just when you feel so out of control, you look for structures and systems that help you feel in control.
Yeah, sure.
But actually it has the opposite effect. But I didn't have any other kind of framework. So I was just very attracted to controlling authoritative structures, controlling authoritative men, controlling authoritative people, because I felt so out of control in everything else. And so when I did, when I had the gap year, I mean, that was a huge issue with my family. I think I was like one of the first in my dad's family to go to university. I had interviews at Central St Martin's, at RADA, you name it, for drama. I probably had an interview there, but I was so angry at that time. I think I remember sitting in the Central St Martin's interview, and they said, why do you want to come and do this directing course that no one gets interviews for? I was like, I think I said, because my dad wants me to go to uni.
Wow.
And they were like, right.
Wow.
Didn't get an offer. But it was that self-sabotage. Well, it wasn't even self-sabotage. It was resistance. I didn't want to.
But going again back to I guess the production of that movie, and then having that opportunity, was that before or
that
after? That's
yeah,
after.
So
So you've produced this amazing.
No, that was.
Oh,
so
the production was after that.
It was in my gap year.
Right,
that I did
okay.
that.
Right.
So I'd left school.
And then you've gone to the
two
interview
fingers
for
up to uni, because I didn't want to be in education anymore. I wanted to do my own thing. I was going to go to Los Angeles and go to drama school or film school, and my nana was like, "You'll die in Los Angeles. Don't go to Los Angeles." And I ended up working for an employment tribunal, actually, in West Croydon, which was really good.
Yeah.
And I loved it, actually, because it's about people and fighting injustice and that kind of thing. And I met my ex-boyfriend, and we started it in 2006, something like that. 2007. Yeah, and it took a couple of years.
Wow.
But I went to uni after. I did a gap year and then went to uni. Did film and TV, because at that point I was like, well, I've always wanted to do. I would love to do it. I love filmmaking. I love.
Because media was still that. Was you still at that time? Do you think searching for that escapism, and that's what film and the arts gave you?
Yeah, and being on set, I think it's that theme of recognition, and I think I've always sought recognition for ability, and it wasn't enough. It was always a feeling of it not being enough. Didn't matter that I smashed my A levels. It wasn't enough. I had to go to uni. Didn't matter that I
wasn't enough for you or your parents, or what who do you mean?
Well, I've put it into me, but I think at the time it was definitely parental recognition. It was the werewolf thing was an amazing experience. And it actually, you know, if I didn't have it, considering what I'm doing now and at the moment and the opportunity that I might have in the next couple of weeks, if I hadn't done Werewolf, I wouldn't be where I am now. And I sacrificed a lot for that documentary. I sacrificed a lot, and my partner, ex-partner, tried to kick me out of it right at the end, and I did all the work, right? And I don't say that from I did all the work kind of point of view, as in, like, I literally, if I wasn't there to produce it, he would still be sitting in his, well, in fact, I think he is still sitting in his bedroom from what I hear. But you know, I made it happen. And that's another thing that people keep saying to me, is that I make things happen and transforms, this idea of transformation, but it's always been transformation of other people. So, you know, I transformed his life from sitting in his bedroom being a DJ to mingling with people who've been in Hollywood for 30 plus years. But left on his own, he crashed and burned those relationships because I wasn't there. And it's the same with education. So I've been transforming other people's departments. I've been transforming other people's lives. I've been supporting, you know, thousands of kids, teenagers, you know, to go and do their dreams. And from what I'm starting to realise now, that comes from that selfless, that self-sacrificing thing comes from a place of childhood open wounds. Aside from that, I did enjoy doing it, but it got to a point where I think I said to you the other day, like, being a teacher is like being a pseudo parent, and you find a lot of traumatized people in education because, again, it's having a department, having a bunch of courses, having a classroom. It's all very, this is my family, school houses, the school crest, you're part of a family with your uniform, this is our little it's all crazy. And no one talks about that stuff. And you get people, you know, if you look at like familial roles, you've got the people who've been there for years, the kind of grandparents of the school. You go into a staff room and it's like, don't sit there, that's that person's space. People are pigeonholed. You've got the crazy uncle or the crazy aunt who is in the, you know, whatever department. It's, yeah, you can get sucked into it, and I did for a very long time, especially if you're seeking a way to create a family, and especially when you have issues around children or, you know. So I was 25 when I left home for the last time, and I moved back to the north, and that I had to because it was just so bad with my mum. And I left with a lot of anger, and I was getting to that point where I was like being called into classes because I could silence them with like one line. And I joke about it now, but I have levels of anger, which is Croydon level 1, 2 and 3. And I don't like, you know, I was tapping into level 3 almost every single day, and it's not a place I want to be in. And it's also, you know, it's not good for kids to see either. And it was just this constant cycle of over drinking, overeating, not looking after myself, not sleeping properly, anger, high, low, high, low, high, low. I was living at home. It was just so much.
When you was at home at that point, were your parents still together?
Yeah.
Are they still together?
No. But so I was 20 when I was 25. I had this kind of sixth sense that, you know, I needed to get out. So I bought a house in Southport, which is just above Liverpool. Got a job, left, and then I was already having conversations with my dad, and, you know, I was always really supportive of him, going, you're miserable, get out. You need to get out now. You know, and it got to a point where I was like, I can't talk to you about this anymore. You're either going to do it or you're not, and I'll support you, but I'm not your therapist. Like, I can't, you know. And that's, I've always been in a position of responsibility from a very, very young age as well. And this is something like with my own children. It's like my children are not there to hear about my trauma. They're not there for me to project my trauma onto them. They're not my confidants. They're not my therapists. You've got people for that. It's not relevant.
That's amazing. Again, back to you, I guess, like I say, breaking that cycle. There's because, like you said, it's so much of our upbringing is learned behaviour, and we can carry on in that path, and you could have replicated so much of what your parents did with your children now, and yet you're going, oh, absolutely not. You've gone the other way and go, they're not going to have the upbringing that I had. I'm going to change that. I just wanted to say something about one of our sponsors, PlusX. I've been a member for over 2 years now, and the podcast studio here is the home to the County Business Talks podcast. Brighton is the perfect location to create, build and grow a business, with role models and inspiration at every turn. It's no wonder that this has become a hotbed of innovation and entrepreneurialism. So if you're building your future here on the South Coast, there's no better place than PlusX Brighton. 7 stories of cutting-edge space, expertly designed to support all kinds of business, from newly started freelancers to large established corporates. With flexible, dynamic environment, ranging from co-working desks to private studios, their specialist facilities include a state-of-the-art prototyping workshop and media suites. They also maintain a community-focused event schedule and offer all kinds of business support programs. Built for anyone who wants to make a change, PlusX has everything you need. Find out more at www.plusx.space. Okay, back to the episode. Do you think some of that as well has come from again, you talk about the education side, and she was in education for 10 years or so, wasn't you?
Yeah.
So in that period, because that's the type, like you said, there was that craving for that family unit, and you felt by being a teacher almost a mother to them children. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there are different. Oh God, every family's different, and unfortunately, in education, there's a lot of toxic family culture. And aside from having to see 150 kids in one day, all with different needs, all with different moods, and if you want to talk about, treading on eggshells and being in constant emotional pressure to act a certain way, go and teach, because if you've come from also that kind of background where you're used to changing yourself to please your parents, well, you can go and do it 150 times over, if you like, every single day, and then you're responsible for their education and their results, and then it's your fault if they don't do that. And so it's the perfect place for someone who's got that kind of family trauma background to just self-flagellate and beat himself up every single day, and then get that recognition at the end if you survive it. So it's a gauntlet of emotional roller coaster. Aside from marking this, that, bloody blah 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 paperwork, the teaching toxicity I've really found is like your relationship with the kids, and the teachers who get rewarded the most are the ones who give up all of their time to be there for those students. And it's like, oh, Mrs., she's there until 6 o'clock at night, and she's given, and I did that. But you give too much of yourself, and it's a job.
Yeah.
That's what it is. But we have this societal view of it. It's not a job, it's a vocation, which I really hate, because it means that it's based on self-sacrifice, and that's not what it's about. And you find in a lot of school cultures, you have to play the game and if you want to get anywhere, especially with like senior management. So I don't say this from a point of bitterness. I say it from a point of wanting it to change. Like going for assistant head roles in my last school, it wasn't the head, it was the leadership below it. They were all mates. They all were godfathers to each other's children. They all had barbecues around each other's houses and blah, blah, blah. And that's fine if you can keep it out of the workplace, but it's impossible. It is impossible. And so, you know, if you wanted to take it, you were always taught, oh, it's the best person for the job. And if you've got the best results, if you've got the best this, da, da, da. Well, I had the best results in the country for 3 years running.
Wow.
I got full marks on my senior leadership qualification and a commendation from the board. Ofsted outstanding for 10 years. Head of department, 11 courses, form tutor, blah, 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 blah. So, like, on paper, you know, you would think that you get a fair shot at it, but the response that I got when I didn't get one of them was, oh, it was the other person's turn. And that's all based on family. That's all, you're bringing family structures into a workplace. But that's not just that school. That's been every single school that I've been in, and I've been in a lot. And this constant theme that I've had of hopping around, like, I think every 2 years, I think I've switched school. This is the last school that I've been in for 4 years, but only because 2 of those were during a pandemic and I couldn't go anywhere. But I finally had burnout. You know, I've had burnout before, but I finally had burnout there, you know, because I've been bullied at school. I've been involved with, like, unions. I've had to stand up for myself and, you know, this kind of thing. So that all of that experience and those kind of themes of feeling disempowered, feeling like I'm not equal, and not getting education that's actually going to help me in the future in terms of, like, being a functioning human being and healthy human being, are all of the things that have led me to black market. And I decided also that, you know, I wanted to finally create this group of people, this community that agree with the same things. And I think it's also really difficult to recognise and say, I may be tied to you by blood, but we don't align ideologically. And keeping, you're in my space, and I understand that, but I don't have to connect with you on that level, because we don't. And I think having this pressure and persistent societal message that you have to keep toxic family members in your life just because you're related to them by blood has caused a lot of unnecessary trauma and issues. And I'm not saying that I want to cut my family off or anything like that. What I am starting to realise is seeing them as adults and removing that, well, because you're my ex, you should act like that. Well, that doesn't exist. That doesn't exist. You're a human being made up of your own bits and pieces. And, you know, at this point in time, it's okay to say, actually, I can't have you in my space because I'm going through this journey and you're going through that journey.
And if you spoke to about what is their response, a couple of things with them, what is their response to you talking to them like that, if you do, and what is there also with their response to you coming out of education and starting the black market?
I mean, I haven't had that conversation because it's just too difficult to have. I say all this. I'm not sitting here saying that I'm perfect representation of healthy human being. You know, I lose it. You know, I try not to, but, you know, last Boxing Day, I was smashing plates in my front garden. because I just lost it. But I recognise that about myself, and I think I'm able to say, yeah, I completely recognise that there wasn't a healthy way of dealing with that particular trigger. Or, I mean, in my parents' generation, there wasn't even a word for trigger.
Yeah.
There was no recognition of trauma or being triggered or anything like that. I mean, sometimes you can overuse it, but I'm trying to strike a balance between saying, actually, I recognise that the way I feel at the moment is because my energy, my body's telling me to check out and to stop doing this. And, you know, it's only very, very recently that I can say, right, especially with like a relationship with alcohol, this is a healthy couple of glasses of wine, have a laugh, have a Zoom. I had a wine Zoom this week with James in France. We were dancing around the kitchen to Lady Gaga.
Nice.
Yeah, exactly. Couple of glasses of wine, no problem. Sitting there and drinking on my own 3 bottles of wine because I feel depressed, obviously completely different. So sure. I think it's the ability to recognise what you're doing and why you're doing it, and actually having the strength to say, I'm not going to engage in this particular activity because I know that it's actually not helping, it's exacerbating. I don't think I can have that conversation with my family yet. I don't think that they're ready, and I also don't think I'm ready, because this is a very new part of my journey. And I think their responses to me leaving education has been fear-based, because they want me to be okay, and because I've been through the court case, and I'm a single mum. I have a wonderful boyfriend, but I'm a single mum, and they've seen me go through a lot. So I'm not saying that they don't love me or they don't want the best of me or anything like that. I think, and what I hope has come across, is that I recognise that we're all in different stages of our life and mental health journey. I think that's probably what it is. And I feel like because I've also had access to amazing support services, absolutely amazing. I've been very lucky, and I've had time off and space, even with all the other crap that's been going on, to explore these kind of things and actually have these kind of revelations and actually have this recognition. And Black Market, it wasn't until I did a business course with Lindsay Boyd, who owns One Earth Global. I was like, oh my God, Black Market is helping me resolve my issues with my mum. And I rang my best friend Zoe. I was like, oh my God, this is catharsis. What's going on? I've created this business because I need to deal with my mum issues. And she was like, yep, welcome to therapy. Wow. Welcome to self-revelation. Because it is so much. Burlesque is about celebrating your body as it is, right? And coming from a place of, I've had 2 children. I've been a size 18. I've been a size 6. Like it's taken a long time to be able to have a healthy relationship with that side of myself. So being able to empower myself to celebrate who I am at the moment has been really life-changing, but also confronted me with a lot of stuff about where those messages have come from, which is why I'm kind of on this examination, I guess, of my family and my background, and not coming at it from a position of, you lot ruin my life and blah 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 blah. That's not where I'm coming from. It's actually being able to acknowledge it, recognise it, accept it, and move on from it. And
that takes quite an element of self-awareness, isn't it, for yourself to still look at it, that actually it's not a blame culture. I'm not blaming my parents for the person I am aware of. I've got to all them things. It's not anyone else's it's accountability ourselves. There's
Yeah.
certain, as much as their influence had a traumatic impact on you for a young age, and even in your sort of early 20s, to actually then still come out of that and take some accountability and go, but I've still got to make a choice here on what path I go. Same when you have kids, you go, I've got to make a choice that I'm going to bring them up in this way and not that way, and I'm not going to replicate what I've seen or the learned behaviour I've had growing up, I guess. And that's an inspiring thing in itself, isn't it? That we're all on that journey, and we've all got some trauma for whatever's happened in our lives, and actually being able to just take a step back and look at that and analyse it and go. But what's really interesting is that you still go, I'm not ready to talk about that part of it with my parents yet, because I'm still on this. This is still an early part of that journey for you, which is I find really interesting, and I think that. And because I want to move on to obviously black market and really want to delve into that. Like it's an amazing concept, and listening to that, like I said, we've really, I guess, sharing your story and your journey really painted a picture about how you've got to this stage and all of those things you've gone through. And I guess I'm keen to talk about the empowerment piece and stuff like that, and what I guess that's the importance of that to you, I guess, and what you want to share with other people and get them to get to that stage as well.
Yeah, and that's the way it's all led to, right? Is choice.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of central theme, ethos of black market, because it's about putting on events and choice, but it's also giving voice and empowerment for people to make a different choice. And I've always had this, dichotomy relationship with corporate, independent, authority, freedom. And a lot of the change that I would like to see in the industry is for more people to have a different choice and represent people who aren't necessarily in the mainstream, and to make it more open and equitable and fair for people to have that, for them to have a choice, and for clients to have a choice. A lot of it has come from like my work in the employment tribunal, having seen the unfair working practices that people have been going through, also my own unfair working practices through school, and feeling like I didn't have a choice but to accept ridiculous working hours, this level of pay, etc., etc. So all of that has literally been building to creating a platform where entertainers have choice. And for me as well, having been on stage, in the arts, all that kind of stuff, it is understood that people in the arts will work for free or for very little, that they don't have a choice about autonomy in terms of parts or people being typecast, aside from the whole underbelly of the industry where it's very much still predicated, as seen by like the Me Too movement and all of the stuff that's been coming out on, in terms of sexuality and what it takes to get to the top, and who's got the power and who's not, and the kind of things that you have to compromise about yourself to be able to get to a position of national recognition, which is ridiculous. And I guess really a lot of it has come from feeling like I compromised myself and my values and what I want and what I need to be able to get to a position of senior management, for example, in education. So very much completely informed the way that I run Black Market, which is entertainer empowerment. So for my hosting on the platform, I don't charge them any fees or anything like that. They have beautiful photographs and footage that's either filmed by me, my brother who's been doing my videography, my boyfriend Sasha who's been doing the photography, or things that they've already got. So it's, not slap you on a website and here's some sort of faceless entertainer and I'm not sitting here criticizing other successful events companies because people make a living out of it, and it's like, okay, I'm just doing it differently. So for me, it's when you're creating a bespoke event, you're seeing the entertainer but also their journey, so they have a bit of a profile on the site as well about them, what inspired them to do their art, just whatever thing that they would like to share. So it's like you're booking that person, and it means more than just, oh, I fancy some circus, I'll click circus, and whoever shows up is whoever shows up, and it's like, hi, goodbye, see you later. I didn't want that, because I know how amazing it can be when you get a group of people to work together, which is informed, like the shows, for example, when I did like September, December, to me it was, I'm looking for people who want to be part of that buzz, who want to create something long lasting and impactful. And if, entertainers want to just arrive, do their thing and go, that's also fine. But it's the community that I'm looking to create, and the people that I'm attracting are people who have those same ideologies as me.
That's interesting, talking about culture and what you're trying to create. I'm keen to as well, like within what's your real dream for the industry to change as a whole, I guess, is what the main thing. Is that what you want to come out of black market, that actually changes the industry across, like within arts across the board?
Yeah, I want to see entertainers have more power and be able to produce. So the thing that was always drummed into me as a teenager was, if you want to be an actress, you're completely dependent on a producer deciding that you are the right fit for that thing at that time. And there's a handful, literally a handful of people who really control the large corporations, right? And to be able to have the opportunity, money, time and space to create something that is independently produced is incredibly hard. And so entertainers I feel are forced into this position where they have to sacrifice whatever it is for themselves, whether that's traveling mad distances, or being part of a production that they don't really want to be part of, or having to dress a certain way or whatever just to get the gig. Do you know what I mean? It's not, you should be able to live from the work that you do comfortably and enjoy what you're doing without having to bend or break in a particular way just because it's money coming in, and just because someone's holding the cash and going, well, if you don't do this, I'll just find someone who will. And that kind of attitude is the thing that really angers me, especially in the arts.
Because it hasn't then, you've got to get buy-in from everyone on that, haven't you? Like to attract, like, so from the entertainer's point of view as well. Like, because if a producer is saying like X, Y, and Z, and you've got to get from the entertainment point of view, people go into those things. They've got to, if everyone was on the same path and everyone said, "Boy, we're not putting up with it. No way, I'm not going to do that," then that's when there's going to be a change. But if then you get to some people that will go, "Oh no, I do need to do that, and I will go and do it," that will cause then a challenge. I must be like, it's a massive vision and an inspiring one, but it's a difficult challenge, no?
Absolutely. And it comes from empowerment, education and equality, and starting it from a space where I think big change, grassroots revolution, and this is what my media department was. It's called Revolution Media, because I was like, after being in Hollywood, I could clearly see that there are those handful of people who control things, and I didn't like it. And I was told by, granted, I was a girl from Croydon, and it completely like, who are you? And no one knows you. But even that in and of itself, just shouldn't be a narrative, right? That should be out there, because it is based completely on inequality. I was told you'll accept these terms because who are you? Literally, who are you? And that, to me, I've always carried that. And what I've always taught my students is go out and question everything, infiltrate. You go and get into those big companies and you start making change. So I've had students go off to work for Channel 4, Disney, Sky, kids from South London, all right, bruv, who, from backgrounds that you would never think would be working for those kind of companies. But I'm hoping that part of how I supported them on their journey was for them to go, actually, I do matter. I am present. I am visible. I am worth all of the things. And I think as someone who's been so drawn to industries, film, media, arts, all the glamour, all the, in front of people, public, and then feeling like that was always going to be an impossibility. Getting the American Wealth thing made it feel like everything was a possibility, because it just flipped everything on its head. But that all came down to John Landis, to be fair, because if he hadn't have picked us up, if he hadn't have supported us, and there are people in those industries who aren't just out to make money or abuse the system or whatever. They are there, and that gives me hope that there are people.
And the more that you, because you're right, like you look at that again, back to that narrative and that story that at 18, what you'd created something, but what I guess gets you in a position to be get to Hollywood. How do you even begin to believe that can happen? And like you say, you speak to someone like John Landis and you get their buy-in, and because that lends itself to the fact of a couple of things I take out of that. Mainly, one, if you don't ask, you don't get. You've got to have the confidence just to ask. What can he have? He could have only said no, and maybe that wouldn't have happened, or you'd have found another route, or whatever that looked like. But you had to ask that question in the first place, which you didn't have the confidence to do that. And then, like you say, Evan, we all need sometimes that helping hand on the way, whatever that looks like. And my understanding of Black Mark and what you sort of expressed is actually you're providing a platform to give people that helping hand. That's the impression.
I hope so. I hope that's how it comes across, because that's what I am trying to do. And again, it's that. So the first show I had, the president of the drag society at Sussex Uni was my drag king. I also had a European pole dancing champion. So for me, it's about stopping this climate of fear and competition, and actually what education does is it makes people better, and it makes things better and creates unique experiences that you never would have thought that you would see. And you're not going to get that if you've got the same circle of people doing the same stuff all the time. And so for me, like, broadening that opportunity, it's not only for audiences to see something artistic, but also I'm an artistic and creative person, right? And I like to blend, and I like to, I've been fearful of new technology for ages, but I had animations in my show in September and December, and it was great because it accentuated the, I was like, we can use that to accentuate the lyrics in this song, and it's going to be really impactful for the audience. So this kind of new, blend of like new and vintage, I think creates, if you look at all the great artists, David Bowie, who, my son Ziggy's named after Ziggy Stardust, Alexander McQueen, they all had, Vivienne Westwood, all these, they took old kind of ideas and added like a new twist to it and created something then completely new, which has then been taken and cut up and repasted and all this kind of thing. And so with Black Market, it's having this collective of performers and people, and I also have spirit brands on there as well, people who hand make their own vodka, gin, all that kind of stuff. They've got this unique twist on on life, on art, on, you know, entertainment. And that to me creates something really exciting. And it also fits with my, I guess, not saying that they don't fit, but I mean like a collection of people who are like me in that way of thinking, but are all different in their own way and unique in their own way. And I get to support them and hang out with them and meet them and create events with them and feel like I actually fit in a room when I used to feel like I just took too much space and I just felt like I wasn't fitting in the air that I was around. So
Is that where, like, is that where, with the community that you are creating now, that's where you feel, again, back to, like you said, black markets come out of, I guess, your journey and your trauma and stuff, and you're creating now because of that, still that craving for connection, but creating a community of, because we're all unique in our own way, aren't we? So actually really embracing that, and you're creating a community where people are, where you fit in and you feel at home and you feel like you're part of that family. Is that what, that's what it is?
it is, but I think it's also, I'm not saying that the entertainers that I engage with see it on this much of a deep level. But a lot of the entertainers that I work with haven't had that person say to them, you know, you are worthy of being paid properly. You know, you don't have to work for a pittance. You know, you don't have to be treated like that. You know, you are. And that also gives me a buzz as well. Sure. But I'm also thinking about my own children and the kind of community that I want them to grow up in, the kind of people that I want them to grow up in. And the world that you want them to grow in. And you can't always, I mean, we've had this discussion about, you can't, people are always going to be people, right? I'm not talking about shutting them off from society and saying this is the only people that you're going to be around. I'm not that silly. So
they've got to have their, but your kids got to have their own path, and they've got to find their own journey and stuff.
Of course. But I think really, if they've got a home to come to, that they know that it's safe and they can be themselves, and they're heard and they're seen and they're listened to, which was not my experience. That I hope, and I'm sure I'll fuck it up in some way, I hope that gives them the freedom to be able to go and do what they want to do. Because I think this is the thing. A lot of the time I think, if I hadn't have, where would I be today if I'd just done black market when I was 18?
Do you think
if I'd just done it without any, you know, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs type thing, without any constraints, without any trauma, what could I be doing? Which I think is probably the childlike part of me grieving over that. If I hadn't have gone through all the stuff, I wouldn't actually be where I am now. So, you know.
Exactly, because I'm a big believer in that, and I do think like there is that element, because I often think about, God, why didn't I just at 16 start my own business? Why didn't I, I could have gone on this entrepreneurial journey, like, and had 10 years experience in it before I even thought about starting it. But actually, would it have been the right time for me? Would I have been in the right headspace to be able to do that? Would I have enough experience to have done that? And as you said, I've fucked things up, and I'll continue to do so, and I'm sure I will. But they're all learning curves, and that's all part of the journey, and that's what gets us, like I say, to where we are today. And I think we can. I mean, this is really, because one of the questions I want to ask you is, which I've been asking people, is if you could go back to a time in life and change one specific moment, what would that be and why? Would that, but if I ask you that question now, is that you'd go back to 18 and start black market or not?
I think I would go back to my very young teenage self, and I would say, stop listening to other people and listen to yourself. Because I do it less so now, but I had such an inbuilt lack of trust in my own intuition that it just led me down roads that I were probably extremely unnecessary for me to go down. So I think that's the one thing I would, when I listen to myself, when I follow my intuition, good shit happens. In fact, amazing stuff happens. And in fact, I do make things happen. And it's taken a long time to trust in my own decision making. And just as an example, like the first court case round that I went through, I handed I had just given birth, to be fair, gave it all over to a solicitor and a barrister, and felt so disempowered by all of that. It left me, I had to rebuild myself from that. The second time round, I did it all myself, mainly because my solicitor, who was a family friend, said, I'm closing my practice and you need to go and do it on your own. But she was like, you need to go and do it on your own. I was like, what? Oh my God. But I did. And I dealt with it so much better because I was self-empowered. I mean, she had to do that. And again, it's that theme of, I'm not saying that I've done this all by myself. I've had people in my life who have constantly, people, educators, my old drama teacher, other, family friends, my own friends. My boyfriend is just so supportive, and I also wouldn't be doing this if I didn't have his support. So I'm not saying on any stretch of the imagination that I've done this on my own, and my parents have been supportive as well. But it's taken that digging inside myself, which is also black market, like dig for victory, and make, do, and mend. And it's like this full circle moment, because I'm like making and mending like relationships and things within myself and digging deep. And I think everyone deserves that opportunity to be able to do that, because I had people who did that for me.
I love that.
And so now I catch myself, and it's good to check in with people, like, absolutely it's good to have a cast, get people to look over things. I had something that I sent off yesterday that I got my dad to look at, because he's good at those kind of things, and I really so I might have a really exciting opportunity in a couple of weeks. And I wouldn't have gone for it if I hadn't have done Werewolf, and this is kind of like where it's coming full circle for me. And I did a show recently based on a very well loved TV series, and I thought, fuck it, let's see if I can get this out there. So I just rang the production company and I was like, hey, I want to do this, who can I send a proposal to? And they're like, oh, okay, send it over. I was like, all right, cool. So I did, and I've just sent off my business proposal.
Wow.
To them.
Can you tell us
I
what show?
I actually can't. I'm really sorry. I can't. I'm NDA'd.
Episode 2.
Episode 2. But it would, if I got that particular license and I did what I am intending to do, that would be life changing. But I wouldn't have done it, if I hadn't have done all that stuff when I was 18. So I think
it's all part of, like we just said, it's all part of our journeys, and all the things that happen for some reason, whatever that looks like, and they're all chapters in our life. They're all part of that journey, and if we can take them bits out of it, that's where we get to and where we are. That's what sometimes shapes then what our future will look like. And by the sounds of it, this full circle coming round potentially could be shaping your future.
We'll see. I hope so. But that's
watch your space.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of it, right? So all our journeys are different, and I think the thing is with black market, it's so many people have been influential and supportive of me on my journey, and I hope that entertainers feel that the people that I've got, if you can give on your journey, then why not? And I think society's only going to get better if people, I'm not saying completely and again, this whole thing of having a balance of not being so self-sacrificing, but being supportive of others. It just keeps the world going round, and having like a closed off, insular society just isn't good for anyone. And so what I'm trying to approach potential clients with is, it's a step, you're supporting someone on a step on their journey, but they're also celebrating yours. And for me, that's really wonderful.
100%. And that, look, for me, I love that, because ultimately, certainly what I think's come out of the last couple of years with COVID, that sense of community. And we, for me personally, I think we work in an amazing business community here. Something I'm obviously, as you know, I'm very passionate about, and there is that feeling of people want to help and want to support people on their journey wherever they are, as I do with people, and as people have done with me, and that, you're absolutely right. I think that is what makes the world go round, and that's what we need to embrace as much as possible. I think
we need joy. It's too short. We've been, lots of people go through lots of we've had quite a few family losses over the last years, and recently as well, and people who were just full of creativity and joy for life. And it's like, it really does make you sit up and go, wow, okay, what am I doing, and what am I going to leave behind? And I think the ultimate goal of being happy and having balance, and full of life's ups and downs, and being able to accept all that. I read something recently that said that happiness isn't the absence of problems, it's like knowing how to deal with it and still finding joy in like every day. And I think, well, who doesn't want to be surrounded by drag queens and glitter and feathers flying everywhere, and seeing something amazing and being like, wow, I remember that piece of performance, or I remember that, feeling that moment of calm or happiness, or I think feeling and having feeling. And I think I've had a lot of absence of feeling because I've just cut myself off from it, because life can be really painful, but it can be like fucking amazing. So
amazing. Look, we're coming towards the end, so I'm going to finish with quick fire questions. Let's jump into these before we finish up. Well, tell me a specific story of someone in your life who helped make you into the person you are today. What did they do?
Well, their story.
A story about that. Yeah, for that moment in time.
So my drama teacher, Sue Barton-Jones, so she's known me since I was 11, and she actually was really supportive and just an amazing teacher, like throughout all of my, so I did drama GCSE, drama A-level, and I remember I went to her when I was 17, and her office door was always open, she was always there for the girls and that kind of stuff, and I just like broke down because we were getting ready to do our A-levels, and I was just like, I can't go on stage. I can't. Like, I spent years on stage, but I was just like, I can't. She was like, okay, I'll find something. Don't worry about it. And she found this unit, this directing unit in the A-level. I could still achieve the full A-level. And she was like, right, well, we're going to do that. I'll write to the exam board. Don't worry about it. We got it. You don't have to do that. And that, got me into the kind of producer journey. So without that, and she came to the premiere of American Werewolf, the documentary. She came with her colleague Sarah, who was also teaching at the time, really supportive. She got me my first teacher training job at my old school. She was my mentor. So we spent a year, she trained me. She's always, I keep in touch with her over the years and go for afternoon tea at the garden centre in Wellington. But she's been at my kids' birthday parties.
That's the power, isn't it? Like, listening to that, it's the power of having an amazing teacher and someone that can actually shape and change your life and have an impact on your life as much as that's such a back to the whole education piece. You've been in that environment for so, and I'm sure, and I can pretty much guarantee how many kids may be sitting in that chair in a few years' time who would say that about you. I'm sure.
You.
So
thank you.
That's incredible. Right, next one. Can you recommend a book? I always ask a book or a podcast, but also I think with you or a film that has had an impact or influenced you. Either or.
Okay, so that's so difficult. So the first film that really got me into loving film was The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, really?
So when I applied for film school, my first line on my statement was Munchkinland 1996 because I'd fallen off a fence panel in my garden and scuffed up my whole arm. I was screaming. It was ridiculous. But I was put in front of The Wizard of Oz and just completely oh my God, changed my life. And from that, I went to watch The Dark Crystal, which was production designed by Brian Froud, who also did Labyrinth with David Bowie. And the puppetry, the skill, the special effects, I was absolutely obsessed, with that. Jim Henson, obviously.
Wow,
so
amazing.
But it was the power of storytelling, but through those kind of traditional techniques and the costume and the music, and they really launched that passion for film production design, set scenery. And then when I was about 18, 16, 17, 18, that was the Tarantino years. That was Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs.
Still my top 5 film, Pulp Fiction. What a film. Just
incredible. His way, again, it's that art of storytelling, but, with
and it's such a brilliant way of storytelling, because it doesn't have to be a start and end and a start, middle and finish.
Exactly.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right. One rule for living a fulfilled life.
Listen to yourself.
Amazing. What wow. What an amazing episode, conversation. I can't thank you enough for just listening, being so raw, open and honest, and sharing just a fascinating, incredible, inspiring story and journey with us, honestly. And I can only wish you every success with Black Market, because it's an amazing concept, and it actually, what a great thing to be able to bring to the world and communities and build that amazing community, because it's incredible what you're doing, and I wish you every success with it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Sorry
amazing.
for waffling.
It's been amazing. Listen, that, as they say, is a wrap. This is the County Business Talks podcast, produced by H2 Productions.